You are listening to the Game Like Training Podcast, where we talk about golf practice, golf learning, golf psychology, and everything golf. On this show, we're going to be sharing our thoughts and our beliefs that have come from over a decade of being in this industry. Not only that, but we'll be talking to industry leaders, world-renowned academics, and pioneering professors to bring you the most up-to-date information and evidence-based strategies to either improve your game or improve your coaching. Hi, I'm one of your hosts, Eric Zeigel.
And I'm your co-host, Ian Highfield. And today's topic is going to be the very important topic of retention and transfer of golfing skill.
And this is a very common theme and probably the most common question that you see within the golf industry of how do I take my range game to the golf course, which is, in essence, retention and transfer of that skill.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. And we've started to touch upon this quite frequently in the podcasts, the short ones that myself and you are doing where we don't get guests on. But I think what the goal of this one is to define the retention part and define the transfer part. The last podcast we did, this one, how to practice golf so that swing changes stick.
Yep.
And we talked about interleaving of practice and how that can induce deeper learning. That podcast really focuses on the retention part, the learning part of how do we retain and transfer our golfing skills? How do we take our range game to the course? Well, the first part is we have to learn it so that it sticks. We have to retain it.
Right. So you're referring to going through a swing change, for instance.
Yeah.
Right. So you're trying to make this change.
Yeah.
And before you even can get to that transfer phase of taking it onto the golf course, right, you have to be able to make that adjustment or change in your golf swing in a less contextualized environment.
Yes. So first of all, there's a great book called Make It Stick by an author. I think his name is Paul Brown or Dr. Brown, whichever one it might be. But get this book, Make It Stick. And that really talks about ways that students can learn in education. And the golf swing is no different. And again, that's what we covered in this podcast. Yes, a swing change so that it sticks.
Yep.
But to say that there would be zero context would be very limited.
Yeah, not zero, less context.
Less context, yeah. So if we take the 80-20 rule, let's say.
Yeah.
If you're going to make a swing change, if you follow what we suggested in how to practice golf so that swing changes stick, that's going to get you to a point where you're ready now to start increasing the context. And by context, we mean doing it in the environment that it's going to be needed. So the golf course where there's a bunker and there's wind and there's water and there's a flag.
And score.
And score, yeah. So psychological context as well as environmental context. Yeah. So the retention part, how do we practice golf so that swing changes stick? Watch that podcast and understand the process of interleaving practice, why this tests the brain, why this creates cognitive stress and induces deeper learning. And then when you've got to that point, then we have to look at the transfer part. So retaining is learning, and the transfer part is actually then taking it onto the golf course.
Yeah.
So why? Why do we, in your opinion, Eric, why do we need to take it onto the golf course and work on this transference of skill?
Well, I mean, I think the obvious answer is because people want to perform better. I mean, you know, you're not going to come across many people that just want their swing to perform well on the range, because everybody asks what, you know, or makes that comment, you know, I hit it great on the range and then I just can't do it on the golf course. And, you know, a skill can only be classed as learnt when it is retained and transferred into different environments. So I think we're going to get into this a little bit more, but that adaptability of the motor pattern is a huge part in the transfer of that skill or movement. And in order to build on that adaptability, you have to go into a more contextualized environment. You have to go out onto the golf course.
Yeah, so you've learned this movement, you can do this movement, but now can you do it when it's into the wind? When the shot's into the wind? Can you make that same movement when you have to hit it over water? Can you make that same movement when the grass isn't flat, when there's differing lies?
Out of bounds, right? Yeah, exactly. If, for somebody that typically hits a slice, as soon as they get on that one hole that, has the water right or OB right, is that new movement or that new skill able to adapt and transfer into that situation?
Yeah, good, because we're not learning a new motor pattern, or we're not retaining a new motor pattern for every single different shot that there is in golf. We're actually building what's called a generalized motor pattern. So when you practice your swing in the circuits that we've given, yes, you're retaining your learnings, but now that's a generalized motor pattern. You don't have a different motor pattern for your 7-iron, your 6-iron, your 5-iron, your 4-iron into wind, your 3-iron from ball above your feet over water. They're the same generalized motor pattern, and you're right. You then have to go and adapt this. So once you feel that you've got your swing to a point where you're happy with it and the club is moving around the body in the mechanical way that you want it to, yes, you have to start now adjusting that to differing lies. But then also there's the psychology, right? There's the psychology of playing for an outcome. Golf is stressful, especially when you have a chance of achieving something. So you also have to learn to swing, to access that generalized motor pattern, adapt it to the environment, but you also have to learn how to do that when you're stressed out.
Yeah. And I think that's a huge or a key thing for people to take away is you cannot isolate these elements of the game when you're training. You cannot say, for this 30-minute block, I'm working on my mental game. And then for this 30-minute block, I'm working on my technique. And then for this 30-minute block, I'm working on strategy. Like, you can't isolate those elements of the game, because ultimately when you perform, you are having to perform with all those elements at the same time.
Yes.
So when you're looking for that transfer of the skill onto the golf course, it's everything's coming together. So you have to approach it that way.
Yeah. And you have to be able to access that generalized motor pattern. You have to be able to think in a way that's going to help you get your best strategy. You have to be able to deal with the pressures all in one go.
Yeah.
It's not like, okay, I've got this last shot to get my European Tour card, which a player that we know faced that.
Yep.
And he goes, so I need my mental game to be good.
Yeah.
Well, no, in that moment, you need everything to be good.
Yeah.
You can have the best mental game in the world. If you have a terrible golf swing and you pick the wrong strategy, then you're doomed. You're set up to fail. So how do you practice in a way that helps you deal with those stresses? And you're the genius on the computer that is building these out for game like training.
So this goes, a lot of this, going into my background very briefly, when I was at Bishopsgate with yourself and then a friend of ours, Zach Parker, and all the other guys down there, kind of got exposed to teaching games for understanding or constraint-led learning, and understanding how you can essentially make the golf course more challenging than a student will experience when they're in a tournament. And then when I went up to Hilton Head and got to work with, or was fortunate to work alongside Stuart Morgan, really we dove into that, the teaching game for understanding framework, and looking at how can we look at this student and say, this is where we want them to be, this is where they are. And this could be anything within their game, and how can we create an environment or a challenge or a game or a task on the golf course for this player to where they are developing these psychological habits that they'll need for competition, where they're being challenged to transfer that movement or whatever skill it is that we've been working on. And so to go back to your question, it's ultimately using the golf course to increase the challenge point and create an environment for the student to basically feel like they're in a competition.
Yeah, create an environment of stress.
Yeah.
So we want the student to literally get stressed out on the golf course so that then they learn how to take this generalized motor pattern, the swing change, that by now we hope they've retained because of the way that they've practiced on the learning performance continuum.
Right.
You know, again, go and watch our podcast on how to practice so that swing changes stick. They've achieved that already. They've been going through that. Now, they still might be, but just 10 to 20% of the time.
Right.
Now, we're looking at 80% of their time. They're on the golf course in these challenges, learning to, number one, adapt the learnings that they've retained, adapt the movements that they've hopefully retained, and then number two, find these movements under the utmost stress.
Yeah.
So let's show, if you're on our website, if we can't see this screen, we'll get Ramel to flash it up, but if you go to resources and then scroll down, on course golf practice, if you click that, takes you to the YouTube channel. Wow, man, you sound great.
I know, right?
But we have graphics of, we're going to have 4 games up there. And I think by the time we go into maybe March of 2019, 25, 30 of these games will be available.
Yeah, and these will be things that we continue to put out. And if there's anybody watching this that has a game and they want it turned into this,
yeah,
feel free to send it to us.
Yeah.
We'll build it, make it look cool.
Ultimately, these games are the transfer part of
Yes.
the retention and transfer of golfing skill. And motor learning encapsulates all of this. If you go and you watch Matthew Cook's online course, or you take Matthew Cook's online course, the motor learning course, you'll see that motor learning isn't just learning about movement. It encapsulates the retention and the transference of these skills.
Yeah.
So a great resource. And I mean, the fact that you taught yourself to use Premiere in a day and produce these was, I don't normally give you many compliments, man. It was.
I know, that's true. I mean, I didn't do it all by myself. I did have some help. Ramel showed me how to do a few things.
Okay.
And then just a lot of failing.
There you go. Learn it. So, as well, just a quick note to end this podcast. Again, link to this. Congratulations to Daniel Gavins getting his European Tour card. Dan is a player that I've known for a long time. I phoned him after he got his card, and I said, "How was it?" He said, "I blocked a 4-iron out of bounds on 12. I nearly blocked my second ball. I nearly did exactly the same with my second ball. It was just inbounds." He said, "And from then on, I didn't have a golf swing." He goes, I was so nervous, I couldn't move. He said, everyone around me looked and felt the same. He said, and it was just a matter of stumbling over the finish line. So I said to him, actually, he went double bogey, he birdied the next. He said he stuffed a 5-iron to like 7 feet on the next,
Wow.
Got a birdie. I think he parred in from then on. He said, but he just couldn't feel his golf swing. And I said to him, well, how did you do it? He said, because I did it in 2015. So there you go. Now, don't wait to get into the Q School final round and experience this. Try and use some of these challenges to experience that before you get in that situation, and develop mental representations from practice that can carry you over the finish line. Because not everyone's as blessed as Dan to have qualified through European Q School from stage 1.
Right.
That's 14 rounds of golf. He's now done it twice.
Right.
So he has good mental representations. But players listening to this, or players that play at different levels, they might not get those opportunities. So use practice to help develop transference of skill, and go to the Game Like Training webpage, the resources section, on-course practice, and play some of our 9-hole challenges that will stress you out, but will get you ready for competitive play and help you transfer your best swing to the golf course.
Love it. I don't think I have anything that I need to add to that.
No, I think it was a pretty good speech.
Yeah, I think that was a pretty powerful way to finish it. Cool. Well, thanks, Iain. I think this is a nice kind of short addition to the other podcasts that we've been doing on this very topic. So if anybody, again, as usual, if anybody has any questions about this or would like some more information, feel free to reach out to us. We're more than happy to field emails and get on a phone call with you and discuss how, if you're a player, how you can get your golfing skill to transfer to the golf course, or if you're a coach, maybe we can give you some things to read or some ideas as far as how you can help your players retain and transfer those golfing skills. Cool. To keep up to date with us, please make sure you subscribe to our mailing list, gltgolf.com. On the top right corner there, it says subscribe. That'll keep you up to date on everything coming out from the videos, so the on-course games, to the latest podcast, to any free downloads that we have coming out. Also, check us out on SoundCloud. This podcast is also on iTunes or Apple Podcasts. Also, social media channels. We're on Twitter at GLT Golf, Facebook at Game Like Training Golf, or Instagram, GL Training Golf. Everything we publish gets put out some way, shape, or form on all of these platforms. Also, almost forgot, make sure you check out our YouTube channel, Game Like Training, and you can watch this podcast. That is it. Thank you guys for checking in. We look forward to bringing you some more information next time.